during a period in Boston I wasn't aware of. Very few people are, unless they're firefighters or sparkies. Was when Boston, from about 62 to 82, it was a 20-year period Mike Foley had written a book about. And there was an unusual amount of fires. I believe it was something like every 13 hours, there was a major fire for almost a period of 20 years called the War Years.
As you mentioned, Mike Foley book on the war years. That 20-year period or so, again, it's part of civil unrest. Boston started changing a lot. Certain areas that were white or Jewish areas were becoming black areas. And there was a lot of urban renewal one way or another. I know in particular in my second book, Bang, Boom, Burn, I have a QR code that people can scan and read about my first fire investigation, which was way over my head, Joe. This family owned a lot of Boston properties. The old man, in this case, was apparently very legitimate. He didn't have any fires and he paid his taxes, but then he gave the business to his two sons. And in the next 5 years, they had 25 fires and they owed the city of Boston $500,000 in back taxes. So things like that were going on. The Back Bay of Boston had a different group going on, and they were burning building after building in the Back Bay. And this is why in the mid-70s, there's a book out there, a famous little book called America is Burning. And this was about the cities around the country who were all experiencing the same type of problem. Fire after fire.
Well, when I read Mike's book and then your book, it was so interesting that it was the confluence of urban renewal. Arsonists, doing it economically because of cutbacks. It was a time period in America, insurance fraud, when you put it all together, that will never exist again, I don't think, to you. And this was a time period with fires that, due to the confluence of all these different things, could never really happen again in America. Am I right or wrong?
I feel you're right. I mean, we've had downturns, economic downturns. For instance, like 1987, you go down to Cape Cod and there was motels and restaurants closed because of this downturn. And I was so surprised, and it gave me a good sense for humanity that these places did not burn. And we've had other downturns. We've had around 9/11, we've had COVID, but the buildings just didn't burn the same way they did. Property values are much different. Investigators are much different. They're much better than they used to be. And now with the cameras and everything else, it's harder to get away with these things. So I firmly believe around the country, I know Boston for sure, fires are way down, and arsons are in particular way down.
That Mike said, and I don't know if the data is correct on this, but Mike, when he talks, I listen because he knows what he's talking about, Mike Foley. His son in his career might fight as many big fires as Mike fought in a year.
I firmly believe that. Like I mentioned earlier, a 9-alarm fire in Boston is so rare, but during this spree just set by this group of arsonists, they probably had maybe 8 or 10 9-alarm fires in 2 years. When you get maybe one a year now, you might get a 3 or 4 alarm fire because the houses are side by side, but you just don't get these major fires like that.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good thing due to technology and other things. I know that he said they do a lot more runs, but they're not big fire runs there or even one alarms. They're more hospital runs or accident runs. So they're out there. But I know as a layman growing up in Boston in the 50s and 60s, fires were a big deal. I remember getting on my bike with friends and we'd see smoke and we'd go to Brighton, we'd go to Boston downtown somewhere, we'd go to Charlotte, we would go all over. And even in Brookline, there was a couple of, there were fires everywhere. And I remember as I got older thinking, it's not like it used to be. On Christmas Eve, you always knew that a family was going to die.
Yeah,
It was like it was part of the fabric of society. What do they call these things? Vertical lumber yards, these 3-deckers and 2-deckers with the asphalt and all. And I thought, boy, things have changed. And this is just a layman thinking about it. I wasn't a Sparky, but I thought, boy, there's not many fires anymore. And good
no,
thing.
you notice on TV that I think it's obligatory for reporters to put a fire on TV almost. So you'll see, several during a week, one today, one tomorrow, one on Friday type of thing. But it's because it's more of an unusual event that they're putting them on TV all the time. Not
Right,
because,
that does make sense, yeah.
you know,
But I'm supposing, not supposing, that is a good thing. Less fires, less deaths. I think as a firefighter, though, you look at those days of fighting, like the war years, like Marines look at the guys who fought on Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Tarawa. Like God, that was kind of it's insane, but that was the heyday of the Marine Corps, the Pacific, and it's just a thing that's in your blood, I guess. Because most people would say, I don't want to go anywhere near Iwo Jima or a big fire, but there are
that's
people
right.
who go, well, I want to be there. Certain
That's right. We need those
personality.
people.
We
We
do.
need,
Crazy
you
or
know,
not, the crazier the better in those days.
you
So,
know, I carried a gun for 25 years, Joe, in law enforcement as an ATF agent, and a couple scary incidents type of thing. But I would never want to be a firefighter.
no, it's cool. When you were a kid, I know when I was a kid, I played firefighter, put a yellow raincoat on and played around. But thinking of doing that as a job, you have to have brass balls. You really do.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I'm so close to I'm almost closer to firefighters today than I am police, because I spent 37 years working on fires and explosions. But my second wife of 28 years, her father was a captain in Revere, her brother was a captain in Revere, and my wife lived through a night in East Boston where 4 3-deckers burned, and she was in the second one that caught on fire.
wow.
So very close to that experience of family and involved on both ends. And now I'm the investigative side too. So
No, it's interesting. Well, everybody loves firefighters. You know what I mean? It's like my dad was a Boston cop, a detective, had a really good career in the Boston Police Department. And he's they weren't as loved as firefighters. Firefighters, it's like Coast Guard versus Marines. People love the Coast Guard. Why? Because it saves them. Firefighters, it saves them. Cop, is license and registration, right? Comes with the
right,
territory.
right.
So all right, this was cool. This was thoroughly enjoyable.